Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and the author of The Codist. You can get that now on Amazon, both Kindle and on paperback. The second edition is out. I encourage you to get a hold of it. I am thrilled today to introduce you to Elaine Storkey, author of the newly released book, Scars Across Humanity, Understanding and Overcoming Violence Against Women. Elaine is a philosopher, sociologist, and theologian known for her work as a scholar, author, speaker, and journalist. Passionate about justice and transformation, she's been a tireless advocate for the marginalized, both as the president of Tear Fund and then as co-founder of Restored, an international organization seeking to end violence against women. She is the author of numerous books, included Created or Constructed and What's Right with Feminism. Elaine Storkey, coming to us from Great Britain. Welcome to Revealing the Truth.
Thank you for being there.
Well, thank you. Elaine, when did this issue strike you personally? Because the passion that you have is a personal. This is not a theoretical approach to this issue of violence against women. This is something that's a part of your fabric.
Yes, and I was already an adult woman, probably in my late 20s, early 30s, when I first encountered violence against women. And I encountered it through a Christian Woman's magazine, where they had put out this questionnaire, trying to get people to open up about their own home lives and their domestic lives and so on, and particularly about marriage relationships, what they were like. And what they got when they got the questionnaires back was absolutely shocking. Because of the way the questions were worded, many women broke their silence, the silence of a lifetime, and started telling about the abuse in their home and the violation and so on. The editor of this magazine didn't know what to do with all these questionnaires, so she sent them to me and said, because I'm a sociologist, can you look through these and then kind of write an article about it? So I foolishly began to read them quite late at night, and I couldn't sleep a wink. I was just shocked. A lot of these were actually inside Christian homes, which was a horrible thing. You could understand violence outside the church, but inside was so frightening. So that was my first encounter. And then since then, I was involved in counseling women and men and people in their relationships to try to get better relationships going. But many, many years later, when I was in the Congo, I was visiting the Congo, and a whole new welter of experiences of violence against women just completely hit me, because there women were being raped as a weapon of war. The best way of actually annihilating your enemies is to rape all the women, give them HIV/AIDS, make sure their offspring are your offspring, not of the opposing forces and so on. And the level of brutality and destruction and the atrocity of this just hit me for six. And I travelled all the way down the North and South Kivu provinces, which were very war-torn, very brutal, and I couldn't take any more. And I thought, something has to happen. I have to do something about this. So that's when I began to write the book. And I mean, the book started as just an explanation of rape and domestic violence. And as the book got bigger and bigger, the big question was, okay, so where in this mythical global woman's life cycle, where does violence happen? And the answer was, frighteningly, all the way along, starting in the womb. And that's what the book is about. It's unpacking the violence to women that starts in the womb and goes right through their lifestyle and life cycle somewhere in the world.
You know, it's so interesting that the leading cause of death in America is the most preventable cause of death, and that is abortion. And that is violence against a woman, even though she may be consensually participating in this. There are those that are consensually still engaging in violent relationships by allowing repeated beatings, allowing repeated handling. The description you gave of what you observed in the Congo dates all the way back that we know, I know personally, to 200 AD, when the Roman soldiers began to rape the Jewish women,
Yes.
so that there was no identification of the Jewish lineage. That was then the paternal seed of Abraham now got changed to you're Jewish if you have a Jewish mother. That was because you couldn't tell who the father was.
Always know who the mother is, yes.
So for the last almost 2,000 years now, we've had to live under this, it's who your mother is that determines your Jewish lineage. My mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, all 16 generations that I could even find are Jewish, both on male and female sides. So my lineage is fairly pure. But recently in America, and I know it's been around the world, this issue of the Hollywood casting couch and the abuse of women. And it caused me to wonder how we could coin a phrase that is so often used around the world in the entertainment industry, that is so, it's a common phrase, it's in the dictionary as a phrase, and its origin goes back, the first time this word casting couch was mentioned November 24th, 1937.
Oh, wow.
And this concept of exchanging sexual favors for employment is 81 years old, so prevalent it has its own name and has been acceptable by society, so much so that the word casting couch just rolls off the tongue without any cause or concern. When we look at pornography, the whole subject of pornography, that is someone's mother, someone's daughter, that is someone's wife.
Yes.
And that is violence against women. And
yes. And very, very often the women are traded into those organizations. Very, very often they are women who are disadvantaged women. Sometimes they're very poor women, and they've found a way of earning some money. And they are exploited terribly. I've met many women who have worked in pornography, many women who work in prostitution. And we've just had a big court case here for the expiry of prostitution convictions in the UK, because a lot of the girls who were convicted had been groomed into prostitution at the ages of 13 or 14 or 15. And one of the girls said she had never met a happy hooker. And she'd never met a happy pornographer, a girl who was actually posing for pornography. So it's a desperate profession, and it's a cry of help very often from these women.
You know, when we look at the extremes, Elaine, from the, in Romania, Ceausescu demanding and fining families for not having more children so that he could create a larger domain. When we see in China the forcible circumcision of women, the mutilation of women for population control because they can't feed the masses of the population. When we see in Africa the mutilation of women, and it goes back so far that we have to look at some of the origins of this and how did we become such a tolerant society worldwide that these atrocities are happening against women, that violence against women is never acceptable under any circumstances, yet there is no country that stands out in the world, there is no religion that stands out in the world. I grew up in a Jewish home, and I don't know if there are less incidences of Jewish violence against women. I would like to believe that my mother raised me to never lay a hand on a woman, never to raise my voice, never to be violent. That was thematic and a part of our people, but we only represent 2/1000ths of a percentage of the population of the world. So, okay, so let's say that we're one group that the statistics are lower, and I'm not sure of that. I just want to believe that.
Yes, I would like to believe that too. But I don't have the figures on the Jewish population worldwide, no.
Right.
But I do know it's an incredibly widespread phenomenon. Domestic, well, we call it now intimate partner violence, because that's mostly what it is. A lot of the violence occurs between intimate partners. They're not necessarily married. In fact, it's a higher incidence where people are not married than when they've actually gone through levels of commitment, although it shouldn't happen in marriages, but it does. But that happens in every culture and every country. And sometimes the culture totally justifies it. Interviewing some people in the Lebanon, where they just felt they had a right to beat their wife if the wife didn't do exactly what they asked them to do. And it was almost like a master-slave or master-servant relationship. And the punishment for not obeying the master was beating, and sometimes death. And the homicide rate, even in the United States as well as in the UK, for women who are abused by their partners and their husbands is very, very high indeed. And it's now in the UK, 2 women every week, and we've got a smaller population, much smaller than you have, but 2 women every week are killed by their partners. And in your country, it's very much higher because, of course, you also have guns. So the level of atrocity is widespread, and it's huge, and it's something we really have to do something about.
Elaine, originally in the Bible, according to many of the commentators, women were considered to be chattel and were for the purpose of replenishing the earth, taking this blessing that God had given to create male and female, and they were created in the image of God, both male and female. Therefore, there's an equality in creation, but a different function, a different role. I don't have a womb. I'm not supposed to have a womb. I was created in the image of God, but I was created in the male image of God. You were created in the female, but it's together, you and I together as one are the true reflection of God, because he was both male and female. We're not talking about hermaphrodite. We're talking about creation and a sacred, hallowed.
Yes, human personhood is gendered. We are male or female, and I know that there are anomalies, and you have a lot of transgender discussion today. But fundamentally, worldwide, we're male or female, and I think it's interesting because the Bible plays about almost with 4 different concepts as to the relationship between male and female. So the first concept is difference. We're different. We're different anatomically, we're different in terms of chromosomes, we're different in terms of muscle weight and those kinds of things. There are lots of studies that suggest that we're psychologically different, but that's also dependent on the society, and those are learned patterns. You learn to be a man in a particular society, you learn to be a woman in a particular society, and so that you reflect those societal norms. But we are different, and in the Bible there's lots and lots of passages where these differences are peppered right through. And sometimes it's the woman who has the wisdom and the nous and the insight, especially in the Hebrew scriptures, the woman who gets the point and the man who misses it, even though he's the patriarch. And especially in the story of Abraham and Sarah.
We just lost your sound. We're going to take a short break. We're talking with Elaine Storkey, author of Scars Across Humanity, Understanding and Overcoming Violence Against Women. We're going to take a short commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to dig into more of the text and talk about this global problem about violence against women. We'll be right back. Shalom. I'm the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, Executive Director of Igniting a Nation and host of the daily TV program Revealing the Truth. seen live every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time at www.ianbn.com, and then replayed throughout the day and night via our website. All of our segments can be seen on the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel. Since our launch in January of this year, we've expanded our global reach to over 54 countries with a social media following of over 125,000. Our commitment is to bring you the most in-depth interviews with authors, subject matter experts, and thought leaders from around the world. We have interviewed guests from Israel, Brazil, England, India, and all across North America. All of our authors are featured on the Books and Media page on our website, www.ianbn.com. There you can find a direct link to the book you want to order, and we receive a small commission directly from Amazon. There is no cost to you for this service. In addition to our daily teachings and interviews, we make available to you the archive of all of the interviews on our YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram channels. Our live program is available from our homepage, and there is never a charge to you for any of this access. We made the decision long ago that we would remain a commercial-free resource that would not be influenced by any pressure from any outside company. There are only two ways that we are able to continue to operate this ministry and provide you with the only live 4-hour daily Christian television talk show program. The first is through your support and tax-deductible contributions to Igniting a Nation. These can be made directly through the donate button on the website or sent through the mail to Igniting a Nation, 2700 Corporate Drive, Suite 120, Birmingham, Alabama, 35242. The other way we support the program is by offering you a unique opportunity to have access to over 10 years worth of teachings on a subscription basis. The teaching archives contains all of my prior sermons, Torah studies, prophecy in the news videos, and much more for the low subscription price of $5 per month. This subscription grants you unlimited access to over 800 hours of content not available elsewhere and is updated weekly with the most current prophecy classes. In addition to 20 hours of original TV programming each weekday, we invite you to join us live every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday evenings for our Prophecy in the News classes. The times and locations are listed on our events page on the website www.ianbn.com. Every day you and I are faced with the challenge of where we will go to hear the truth. We are committed to bring you the only program of its kind that covers the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. We cannot do this without your support. Since we launched on January 5th, 2017, we have aired over 300 individual teachings, interviews, and commentaries not available anywhere else. We are now working side by side with almost every major Christian publishing house to bring you the most in-depth feature interviews possible. Our 1-hour features address every subject that affects the believer's life. We are hearing of salvations from the Middle East, Africa, and all across the United States. Lives are being changed every day, and we have only just begun. Our mission is to become your trusted resource and grant you access to the people, tools, and information you need to grow in your relationship with the Lord. You can help us by liking us on social media and through your financial support. We know you have many choices in who you support, but we are prayerfully asking you to consider helping us keep revealing the truth, true to our calling, to cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth like no other program available. Donate today and help us bring the message to the four corners of the earth. Visit www.ianbn.com and donate, buy a book, or subscribe to our teaching archives. Without you, we do not exist. Back. Shalom. I'm the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, Executive Director of Igniting a Nation and host of the daily TV program Revealing the Truth, seen live every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time at www.ianbn.com and then replayed throughout the day and night via our website. All of our segments can be seen on the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel. Since our launch in January of this year, we've expanded our global reach to over 54 countries with a social media following of over 125,000. Our commitment is to bring you the most in-depth interviews with authors, subject matter experts, and thought leaders from around the world. We have interviewed guests from Israel, Brazil, England, India, and all across North America. All of our authors are featured on the Books and Media page on our website, www.ianbn.com. There you can find a direct link to the book you want to order, and we receive a small commission directly from Amazon. There is no cost to you for this service. In addition to our daily teachings and interviews, we make available to you the archive of all of the interviews on our YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram channels. Our live program is available from our homepage, and there is never a charge to you for any of this access. We made the decision long ago that we would remain a commercial-free resource that would not be influenced by any pressure from any outside company. There are only two ways that we are able to continue to operate this ministry and provide you with the only live 4-hour daily Christian television talk show program. The first is through your support and tax-deductible contributions to Igniting a Nation. These can be made directly through the donate button on the website or sent through the mail to Igniting a Nation, 2700 Corporate Drive, Suite 120, Birmingham, Alabama, 35242. The other way we support the program is by offering you a unique opportunity to have access to over 10 years worth of teachings on a subscription basis. The teaching archives contains all of my prior sermons, Torah studies, prophecy in the news videos, and much more for the low subscription price of $5 per month. This subscription grants you unlimited access to over 800 hours of content not available elsewhere, and is updated weekly with the most current prophecy classes. In addition to 20 hours of original TV programming each weekday, we invite you to join us live every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday evenings for our Prophecy in the News classes. The times and locations are listed on our events page on the website www.ianbn.com. Every day, you and I are faced with the challenge of where we will go to hear the truth. We are committed to bring you the only program of its kind that covers the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. We cannot do this without your support. Since we launched on January 5th, 2017, we have aired over 300 individual teachings, interviews, and commentaries not available anywhere else. We are now working side by side with almost every major Christian publishing house to bring you the most in-depth feature interviews possible. Our 1-hour features address every subject that affects the believer's life. We are hearing of salvations from the Middle East, Africa, and all across the United States. Lives are being changed every day, and we have only just begun. Our mission is to become your trusted resource and grant you access to the people, tools, and information you need to grow in your relationship with the Lord. You can help us by liking us on social media and through your financial support. We know you have many choices in who you support, but we are prayerfully asking you to consider helping us keep revealing the truth, true to our calling, to cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth like no other program available. Donate today and help us bring the message to the four corners of the earth. Visit www.ianbn.com and donate, buy a book, or subscribe to our teaching archives. Without you, we do not exist. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Elaine Storkey, author of Scars Across Humanity, Understanding and Overcoming Violence Against Women. Elaine, welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
Before we had a little glitch in the technology between Birmingham, Alabama and Cambridge, England, we were talking about the four descriptions, four differences between men and women defined in the Bible. I'd like you to kind of start that over again And
Yes, I was suggesting that the Bible doesn't have just one rigid formula for the relationship between men and women, but it has four different concepts that come up from time to time. And the first one is difference, the fact that we are different. We're different anatomically, we're different in muscle weight, we're different very often in function. Certainly, we're different biologically and in terms of conception. That's quite important. And that's spelt out lots and lots of times in the scriptures. But we're also the same. We're the same in that we are all born in the image of God. We all have this choice as to whether to serve and follow God or whether to go our own way. And we're all sinners. There's no difference in human sin between male sin and female sin. It might be slightly different, but it's still sin. And so that sameness, we have the same longing for redemption. We have the same need for forgiveness. We have the same need and longings for love and for intimacy and for knowing God. So that's also very much part of our thing. And we have the same gifts. God, the Holy Spirit, gifts human beings in the same way, in similar ways. So women and men both prophesy, and women and men both teach and bless one another and so on. But then there's complementarity, that we actually fit together. We often make up for the defects of the other one, not necessarily in stereotypical ways, all kinds of really creative and imaginative ways we fit together. But it's very important that we do. And that fit, it goes on right through the scriptures. And even in the New Testament, you get this playing together of complementarity of male and female. And then, of course, we are really fundamentally in union. We are united in our humanness. We are united in the sense that we are longing for redemption and for the recoming of Christ and so on. So I think wherever you are in the scriptures, you will get one of those concepts being focused upon and being the central one. So when Paul says in Christ there is no male or female, he's actually drawing on the similarity, the sameness, the identification of male and female. At other places, when he's suggesting that men need to teach and women need to learn first, he's focusing on differences. But I think those are played through all the time.
Elaine, for someone like myself that is not within my capacity to conceive of perpetrating violence against a woman, it was from the youngest age. I had two sisters, so I from the earliest recollection, I have an older sister, 3 years older than myself, that I was to never. There were the harshest and most direct of lessons was you don't hit, you don't. This is how you treat women. And in the Sunday school that I attended, we talked about Jewish ethics and Jewish morality and how to be a good citizen and how to be a good husband, a good father, a good man, a good member of society, a good contributor to the culture and to the identity. And it was inbred. I can't conceive of raising a hand against
Yes.
a woman. So it's so foreign to me, but it is so prevalent across the world.
Mm-hmm.
In what we would consider to be the Christian nations, we really have to speak to, can you be a Christ follower and abuse a woman?
Well, you can, because we're all sinners and we all sin in some way or another. But I think you can't if you are holding on to that abuse and that you are willfully perpetrating that abuse and that you're not willing to repent and change. I think then there's something about the gospel that hasn't touched you, hasn't spoken to your heart. So we're all sinners. We all need to come before God and say, search my heart, O Lord, see if there's any wicked way in it. But having done that, opened our hearts, and there is a wicked way in it, if then we're saying, well, I'm sorry, I'm not going to change. And the problem is, I think, where men often feel entitled. It's that sense of entitlement. They can do what they like with women because either they've got the power, they've got the money, like that's what the whole Hollywood thing was about. They've got the power and the money of these people, so they can do what they like. They can make the demands that are completely immoral and wrong and eventually inhuman. And if they can, they often do. But yes, is it Christian? Of course it's not Christian. It's a million miles away from the truth of the gospel and from the love of God and from the way that we see the heart of God in the scriptures.
Throughout history, empires and nations have used crimes against women as a way of building an empire or redefining an empire. The people that follow along with it, the people that continue to perpetuate it, the people that continue to perpetrate it, what can we do? We definitely need to read your book.
Oh, thank you.
I read it, excuse me, and to me it is a record of atrocities that are of Holocaust and biblical proportion.
Yes.
Things I can identify. Sorry, excuse me. Things I can identify with. You know, during the break, I asked you how many Einsteins and how many Gandhis and how many Billy Grahams have we aborted? How many of the wonderful people in this world, the Mother Teresa's, have we murdered? What would society look like had all of God's children been allowed to be born? What would nations look like if there was this respect and this equality? And I'm not talking about, and it's interesting because you are touted as a feminist. And in America, feminism equals liberalism. And in the UK, feminism is a conservative position.
Well, it's all kinds of things. It's an umbrella for people from very different backgrounds, very often all coming together to agree that women are human too.
Right.
And as far as Christian feminism is concerned, it's saying, well, what would Jesus do in these situations?
Exactly.
And if you look at Jesus' relationship with women, that's where we get our feminism from this deep respect, and sometimes turning his back on culture to actually favor the woman in the way that he is trying to get other people to respect the woman and other people to consider her needs and so on. So that's the kind of feminism that we espouse in the Christian church here in the UK.
Oftentimes I find people taking a look at the women in the Bible as, for instance, they keep Rahab as a prostitute.
Yes.
Okay, Rahab as was a prostitute, turned into a redeemer, and was the mother of Boaz. Mm-hmm. And so keeping her identified as Rahab the prostitute and not a righteous woman of God who was instrumental in the lineage of Jesus,
yes,
is contrary to a equality in its own form, in its own subtle Christian way, its own subtle biblical way, is anti-women. When we look at Ruth, if we take Ruth all the way back to her origin, she's a child of incest. Okay. If we keep her in that role as Ruth the Moabitess, which if you're a Bible scholar or Bible studier, then you know that Moab was the incestuous offspring of Lot, because his daughters had no husbands and they slept with their father. We can hold on to the negativity and the origin, but then are they not overcomers themselves by the word of their testimony the same way you and I are?
Yes, and that's why I think the story, there are two different stories in the New Testament when Jesus is anointed by a woman, and one of the women who anoints him, the suggestion is that she herself is a former prostitute. So she's coming now, and I love that story so much precisely because it's saying, well, who is she and what is she? And Jesus promises that wherever time will go, the story about her anointing him, anointing his feet, kissing his feet, letting her hair down, and so on, will be told, because she's done a very fine thing. But also, she's made up for the lack of hospitality of the hosts at that party or that dinner that he was at. Now, I think that your point about who are these women, do we keep people encased, if you like, in their past, or do we allow them the freedom to be who they are in God, is a vital one. And that, you know, there's Christian work right across the world right now with prostitutes. Here in the UK, it's one of the big growth areas of Christian mission and Christian service and outreach. And all over the country, there are safe houses for prostitutes to come to, run by Christians who will give them baths or showers, give them food, and give them time really to actually reflect on what they're doing and help them to exit prostitution, because it's a no-winner. It's a tremendously awful position for a woman to be in, and there's a lot of success here. But there's a big international organization called the International Christian Alliance on Prostitution, which came out of the Baptist Church in North America, which is doing amazing work right across the world, releasing women and helping them to walk free from their past into a new future where God will bless them and will, in fact, in so many ways, make them very fruitful in the whole areas that they're doing. So I think you're absolutely right, and I would agree with you.
Human trafficking,
Yeah.
in its own design, is slavery, it is enslavement,
Yes.
it is violence, it is the selling and the manipulation of one person to perform for another person. It is both male and female, but predominantly it is women as the prostitutes and men as the Johns or the pursuers of this. And I honestly don't think we talk about this enough in the pulpit. We don't preach about it enough in the pulpit. We have in America what's called safe haven laws, that a woman who is pregnant that can't take care of the child can go to a fire station, a police station, or a hospital and relinquish the child without having any repercussions, doesn't have to give any information, just places the child into a safe haven, regardless of whether or not they're in drugs, regardless of whether or not, whatever their circumstance, they're protected in America. And a lot of this is because there are women who know their past, but they don't want their past to define their future.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And they want to give a child a fresh start, but they too, in their own way, want a fresh start. I think we become stereotypical and judgmental, which it seems to be synonymous with Christianity in a lot of circles, is that judging the behaviors of others against a standard in which ourselves cannot be met is as hypocritical as we can possibly be.
And we never know what we would be like if we had those circumstances in our own lives. You know, if we had no parents, if we'd been sold into some kind of trafficked environment at a young age, how would we get out? How would we cope? And that's the question that's asked of trafficked victims all over the world. And similarly, even in countries like India, where there is a high level of female abortion, sex-selective abortion, aborting the female baby because she's a liability from a family point of view. She'll go and be somebody else's bride, and then she'll belong to that family. She will not have anything to bring to her home family. And what's more, they have to provide a dowry for that family, and they might be in debt for the rest of their lives if they've got 3 daughters. So they abort them, or they put them for infanticide. They just leave them out to die. So all of those situations, we have to ask, why are they doing that? And very often there's something in the culture that needs to be addressed. In this case, there's the whole value of women in Indian culture. The value, why do we have a dowry? Why do they have to pay the bridegroom's family to take their daughter off their hands? Of course, they value their daughter. And I've met many women who feel that they have been forced to abort their babies because the family, the in-laws have required them to do this, but it's broken their hearts. And so I think holding back our judgment and recognizing with compassion the horrible struggles that people who are either trafficked or trapped in these relationships or having pressure put on them by the culture or the conditions that they're in, I think that's really something that we have to do as Christians. Show compassion and then find ways of actually annihilating these practices because they're so abhorrent to Christianity.
You know, we spend so much time talking about nuclear proliferation. We talk about so many issues that are being fought across international diplomatic lines, that the real things that affect us on a day-to-day basis, right? The fear of nuclear war with North Korea is in the headlines every single day, while millions of women are being trafficked across the world. Millions of children are being aborted across the world. And that's reality. And they're dealing with the theoretical scenario, the same theoretical scenario we got caught up in the 60s and the 70s with the former Soviet Union that did not come to pass.
Exactly. And if we pursued good international relations rather than always had this warfare mentality, you know, we'd be a lot better off globally. And that I feel that very strongly indeed. But you're right, they didn't come to pass. I think the whole Cold War was built up and up and up, and more weapons changed sides. But actually, what was it all about? So it's a very big question to ask that. And I agree. And it's a detraction from all the other issues that are going on around us.
You know, you're in a very unenviable situation there in England with the closing the barn door after the horses are all gone,
Right.
and the Brexit, leaving the EU so you can close the borders,
Yes.
but you have Sharia laws, you do have no-go zones, and there is a huge dividing line which is being formed within your own cities, within your own counties, that are causing a cultural change, hearkening back to the days of the American Revolution, that there are people within the borders that are not in sync with the governing authorities and with the current structure of the law. So will there be an Islamic revolution in Europe? Will there be an organized, because there are no-go zones in England, there are no-go zones in France, there are no-go zones in Germany. The Islamization of Europe is coming west, and along with that comes an ideology that subjugates women. So anyone who has even a modicum of intelligence and is literate, who is willing to read about the ideology of Islam, knows that women are subjugated and have no rights within Islam. So why would you want to advance that ideology or allow that to, or encourage that to become a part of the fabric of your society when it's written in the Quran, when it is written in the Hadith, when it's written that women have no rights and they are subject to their husband, and he may do whatever he wants, however he sees fit, and he is without judgment. It is above the law. So I'm perplexed as to why there's this effort to find a laissez-faire, can't we just all get along gospel that's starting to creep into the Christian world that says, okay, let's find a way to make peace with our Muslim neighbors, our Muslim neighbors are not adopting an ideology which fits with putting an end to violence against women.
Well, that's a very big question. And I did spend 8 months reading the Quran and looking at Quranic hermeneutics and talking to Muslim women and talking to Quranic scholars and so on. And yes, I think there's a case to answer there. There are more things in the Quran that are difficult to, if you like, overcome than certainly there are in the Hebrew scriptures of the New Testament. There's nothing at all in the New Testament that ever gives any justification for violence against women. Nothing, absolutely nothing. So, and anything that any person that tries to twist the scriptures in such a way that they do justify it are actually abusing the word of God. But the Quran is more ambiguous than that. I mean, there are passages that many people have interpreted as being a permission to beat your wife and so on. But the good news, there is good news. And the good news is, in our experience in the UK, the people who are wanting to change this most of all are the Muslims, not the Christians, because it's not our business to a certain extent. As long as Muslims are not breaking the law, as long as they're not terrorizing our neighborhood, and they're not. The majority of Muslims in the UK are peace-loving and actually very constructive members of society. And it's the women, particularly, who are saying, do you know, we don't want this. We want to be Muslim women. We don't want to change our beliefs, but we don't want to be treated like dirt. And we don't want to belong to a kind of religion that has this reputation of being like this. So they're the ones working for change. And I see change all over. Just 2 nights ago, before the International Women's Day, I was in the Houses of Commons, and an awful lot of young Muslim women were there who are actually now professions. They're holding jobs down in all kinds of areas. They're developing work in the law, in medicine, in the media, and so on. And they're getting somewhere. And I think they're making such an impact that things will change even within Islam. So for me, I'm less worried about Islam, certainly in the UK. Of course, there are terrorist groups, and that has to be addressed. And we have to make ways of constraining those and making sure that they don't have their way. But terrorism doesn't speak for the whole of the religion. And I think it's when members of that religion see peace-loving people and see Christians loving each other and working differently with a different attitude towards men and women, it's surprising how quickly they catch on and actually do the same, and then can find a way of justifying it even within Islam. So I'm much more optimistic and hopeful than you are. But we have to keep the terrorists at bay.
But you make such an outstanding point, and our time has come to an end. But that point is that we as believers, if we can demonstrate the better way,
Yes.
it is provoking others to notice and want to have the blessing and the benefit of that better way. And that's something that's quite obvious. Elaine Storkey, author of Scars Across Humanity, Understanding and Overcoming Violence Against Women. Why would you want to read such a book? Because you would want to do something about it. You would want to join an international community of activists that are actually providing safe havens and providing support to get women off the street and out of these situations, to put pressure on governments through advocacies to change the laws of the land so that there cannot be female mutilation, that rape is actually being dealt with at a criminal level as opposed to a societal acceptable standard. This is a book that is going to challenge you, but if your heart is like my heart, and that is for the protection of women worldwide. I don't care what country they're from. They are all created in the image of God. My people, the Jews, are spread out to every nation, to the 4 corners of the earth, and I want to be certain that I am as universal across the world in my treatment as a believer in the Messiah, in the teachings of the Bible, as to how I treat women, and challenge you to do the same. Elaine Storkey, thank you so much for being with us here on Revealing the Truth.
Thank you for your hospitality. I appreciate that.
God bless you. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.